Hello, my name is Robyn Welsh and I'm the co-author, along with music historian Grant Galanders, of the social history non-fiction book called Wired for Sound, the Stebbing History of New Zealand Music. This hefty, colourful, vibrantly designed book tells the New Zealand music history of the artists who came through Stebbing's famous studios from the 1940s through to the present day, through the eyes of the musicians, the artists, the singers and the songwriters and the engineers and the Stebbing family themselves who are behind this amazing business. Today I'm reading to you from the Jervois Road Studios, which is this building here, and I'm sitting actually at the control desk of the main studio. But today I want to read to you and take you back a little bit further to the 1960s, to the era of the famous Saratoga Ave recording studios that are well known for artists including Ray Columbus, the La-Di-Das, the Pleasers, Bunny Walters, and another artist in particular, Peter Poser, who had a very close link with Eldred Stebbing in his producing and recording days, and this is where I'd like to pick this reading up from. Young Peter Poser, famous guitarist, swapped his government job for a career in music, and this is where I want to take up his story. Peter chose music over his job, approaching Eldred Stebbing to secure his band's first studio audition. I remember Eldred was reading some technical publication, says Peter. It was German, I think. He was still reading it as we auditioned for him. After the audition, he politely told us that we weren't up to a satisfactory recording standard. This shook me a bit and I thought, well, I'll show you. So we went back to the drawing board and practiced and practiced. We managed to get another audition a short time later, and it was the same result really, minus the magazine. This time, Eldred took Peter aside and told him that his combo band wasn't good enough or different enough, but that he saw enormous potential in Peter as a solo guitar act. Peter was taken aback. I never thought of myself as a solo act. I liked being in a group situation. Anyway, after a bit of thought, I shook hands with Eldred, and he became my manager and my record label. I then had to tell the combo. A couple of the guys were pretty hot with my decision and threw a bit of abuse my way. The other guys accepted it, and we kind of broke up. Eldred and Peter set to work on their shared interest in multi-track recording, which Eldred had employed 8 years earlier when he recorded guitarist Buddy Kane and Esme Stevens, singer, in the style of the American duo guitarist Les Paul and vocalist Mary Ford. He'd done so by recording the various instrumental tracks, vocals and effects separately, and then mixing them into the final master tape, and Eldred wanted to do more of it. Peter put down the tracks for his first single, Sweet Georgia Brown, with Some of These Days on the B-side. That was released in late 1960. I'd always go home after a session and worry needlessly, he said. I'd worry needlessly that the tracks weren't good enough. It was just my nature at the time. Eldred and I were both pedantic perfectionists, and well, that was just as well. Otherwise, we'd have driven each other mad. Peter Poser's 1961 hit Wheels was marketed as the multi-guitars of Peter Poser, and it came about after Eldred taped the original version off a shortwave radio broadcast and beat its release by several months. It was kudos for Eldred all around. The original had been recorded by the String-Alongs at Norman Petty's famous studios in Clovis, New Mexico, where most of Buddy Holly's hits were recorded. Better still, Peter Poser's New Zealand version was on its way up to sales of 50,000 units, and the fans in New Zealand went wild. Lower Queen Street in Auckland came to a halt when 2,000 people tried to cram into Woolworth's downtown stores where Peter was promoting the single. Interestingly, Peter revealed years later that the reason he re-recorded the song on the Viking label following his split from Zodiac because he never actually liked Eldred's version, but the figures speak for themselves. Meanwhile, amid the height of the success of Wheels, Eldred moved to further capitalise on Peter Poser's rising profile. Together they set off in Eldred's brand new Ford Zodiac for a series of 45-minute gigs that Peter was booked to play at various venues around Northland and the Waikato. Says Peter, "It was good to have Eldred with me as we had to cart around a tape machine with my multi-track recordings on." Huh? Who needs a band? He ponders out loud. Actually, we did in the end. We were doing an early evening guest spot in Wellsford, and halfway through the set, all the local cow cockies started milking the cows at the same time. Suddenly, we are down to half power, and the tapes start slowing down, and the next thing you know, I'm out of key. Talk about embarrassing. The audience thought it was a great joke while I'm busy retuning the guitar between songs. I started looking around for a band after that. One gig at Tikawiti took a decidedly different turn. It was a late nightclub called Club 99 that sold booze illegally, and to get in, you had to show your identification at the back door. After the gig, the club owner invited Peter to stay and have a drink and a jam with the band. Peter checked with Eldred and he was fine with the idea. Sure, we can stay a little while. Peter started jamming. After a few songs, I noticed that the drummer sounded a bit different. I looked behind me and here's Eldred playing the drums and having an absolute ball, grinning from ear to ear. They stayed on until 3 a.m. before heading back to Auckland. We got back to Saratoga Ave at about 7 in the morning, and here's Margaret Stebbing waiting for us. I slunk off and left Eldred to it. I think Margaret blamed me for that one, so I used to try and avoid her for a while by sneaking into recording sessions through the back door of the studio. With a solid fan base assured, Peter released his first album, String Along with Peter Poser, in September 1962. Eldred and I worked really well together on the album. We spent what seemed like forever on the arrangements. Because of my percussive style of playing, we needed drums on only 4 tracks. Reviewed in the Spinning the Discs column of Playdate magazine in October that year, the album was credited with showcasing Peter's talent for creating music. Not only sweet, but beaty as well, it said. The review continued, "The new Peter Poser LP is a triumph for all concerned, including Auckland electronics wizard Eldred Stebbing, who has dubbed the tapes one on top of the other in such a way that Peter sounds like the famous 76 trombones of the Music Man in guitars." And I'll just show you a little photograph of the front of the album. And this was taken in the family house above the basement studio at Saratoga Ave. So that's given you a little insight into the days of recording back then, and there's plenty more to read here if you want to do so. Thank you.